In the fall of 1788, a major European superpower engaged in a massive nighttime firefight. Cannons roared and cavalry scattered as thousands of rounds were spent fighting shadows in the pitch black. But as the sun rose, it became clear there was no enemy army present. The Austrians had been fighting themselves. This wasn't a minor skirmish. Emperor Joseph II had assembled a massive force of 100,000 Austrian troops, intended to march south and seize territory from the Ottoman Empire. This chart shows the Danube River Basin, the primary theater of the conflict. By September, the Austrian army had occupied a forward position near the town of Karánsebes, deep in these volatile borderlands. On paper, it was a formidable show of force, but the polished exterior of the Habsburg military masked a fragile machine that was already beginning to fracture under the pressure of the campaign. The Habsburg Empire was a sprawling collection of different cultures, and its army reflected that diversity. The ranks were a patchwork of Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Croats, and Italians. This diversity created a logistical nightmare. While the officer corps issued commands in German, the enlisted men spoke a dozen different tongues, shattering the chain of command into a mess of linguistic isolation. Beyond the language gap, the environment was punishing. The troops were exhausted by night marches and decimated by disease, all while operating under a paralyzing fear of sudden Ottoman ambushes in the dark. This combination of linguistic barriers and psychological terror created a volatile system. It meant the entire army was primed to react to a single misunderstanding with catastrophic, self-destructive force. The crisis began on the night of September 21st, when a vanguard of Austrian hussar cavalry crossed the Timush River to scout for the enemy. Instead of the Ottomans, they found a group of locals selling schnapps. The scouts bought the alcohol and started a drinking party, neglecting their duties. Soon, a contingent of Austrian infantry also crossed the river and spotted the party. They demanded a share of the schnapps, but the intoxicated cavalrymen flatly rejected them. The two units began a physical brawl in the dark, with friendly soldiers fighting over a barrel of alcohol just kilometers from their main camp. During the fistfight, an anonymous gunshot rang out. This lone shot acted as a fatal piece of corrupted data, feeding directly into the military's vulnerable and fearful communication network. To scare the cavalry, the infantrymen jokingly shouted "Torchi, Torchi," meaning Turks. The hussars, blinded by alcohol and the night, didn't see the joke. They panicked, mounted their horses, and fled toward the camp. The infantry, hearing the thunder of hooves and seeing silhouettes retreating, assumed they were being overrun. They broke rank and sprinted after the cavalry, dragging the panic toward the main body of the army. German officers shouted "Halten," meaning stop, but to non-German soldiers, it sounded like the Ottoman cry, Allah. This corrupted signal acted as a contagion. Men heard the screams, concluded the enemy was inside, and began firing in every direction. The main camp woke up to a stampede. Hearing the gunfire and the misinterpreted battle cries, the Austrian troops concluded they were under a massive, coordinated Ottoman attack. In absolute chaos, an Austrian corps commander ordered his artillery to open fire directly into his own camp, believing he was repelling a cavalry charge. The entire 100,000-man army dissolved into a panicked retreat, with Emperor Joseph II himself forced to flee on horseback. When the real Ottoman army arrived 2 days later, they found a devastated camp littered with Austrian casualties, but no Austrian soldiers left to fight. The Battle of Karánsebes was a phantom conflict, a systemic collapse triggered by a single misheard word and a barrel of schnapps. This story has become a legendary internet meme, often cited with the shocking claim that 10,000 Austrian soldiers were killed by their own comrades that night. This chart compares the legend to actual 1788 diaries. Official reports suggest real friendly fire casualties were between 150 and 500. The 10,000 figure misinterprets total campaign losses. Tens of thousands died, but largely from a massive malaria and dysentery epidemic, not musket fire. The legend relies on a misattribution of data, taking the fatalities from a large-scale public health crisis and attributing them to a single night of tactical confusion. Even the narrative of the drunk hussars and the schnapps took decades to emerge. It didn't appear in print until 1831, when it was published in an Austrian military magazine. This version served a purpose. For 19th century commanders, blaming the retreat on drunk, insubordinate scouts was a convenient way to explain why a massive superpower fled from an empty battlefield. Modern biographies in the 1960s and today's internet culture have further calcified these excuses and the inflated death tolls into accepted historical fact. The legendary body count of Karánsebes is a myth, but the event remains a timeless warning. In the fog of war, a breakdown in internal communication can be as lethal as any enemy army.